Good evening and welcome to the November 6, 2024 City Council Work Session. I am calling this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Thank you all for joining us. Let's get started with our invocation and our pledge of allegiance to the flag, led by our City Attorney Tom Trask. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, help us to carry out our tasks as necessary to fulfill our purpose. Help us to stay on track so that we may let this meeting work for our good and for the good of this community. Help us to be good stewards of positive change to benefit the city of Oldsmar and its residents. In this we pray.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. Next item on our agenda is our Oldsmar Open Forum. Each speaker will be recognized once and will be limited to a 5-minute comment on any subject. If you have filled out a speaker card, please hand it to the city clerk. Filling out a speaker card is not mandatory, and you will still be given an opportunity to speak. When speaking, please state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to the council? Come on up, Tom.
Tom O'Shea, 208 Lake Charles Court. I just want to say that, first off, my understanding is a high-rise building is anything over 10 stories, and the code would allow up to 6 stories, so there would never be a high-rise building on this lot if we were to build something on this lot. And second off, the code allows 6 stories, so if you guys didn't want a 6-story building or a 5-story building, you guys could change the code and the ordinances. But I'm okay with tall buildings. Put some trees and you won't really see the top of the building. Get some people in the city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Anybody else like to speak to the council? Come on up, please.
Hi, everyone. Council, Mayor, thank you for having me up. My name's David Pratt, and I live at 204 Lexington Street. And just in transparency, I am running for City Council seat 4. A little bit of background. I've been a realtor in this area for probably 18 years. I've sold a lot of properties in Florida, listed them, had buyers, bought them. I moved here 25 years ago when there were still dirt roads. They had the beautiful Oldsmar Hotel down at the end of Lafayette that got torn down a few years back. So I kind of know the city. And this big thing with the redevelopment, I only have a couple small concerns about it. Tampa Road right now is getting like US 19. It's just crazy. If you go to Forest Lake, Tampa Road to Forest Lake is backed up halfway to Boot Ranch. You try to get out Lafayette in the morning where the Publix is, you're backed up sometimes 2 or 3 lights just to get out. So now we're looking at this, this new redevelopment that has these apartments in it, and we could be very easily talking about 300-400 cars moving in and out of there at any given time. And I just don't know if there's been any study that I haven't seen, it might be out there and I just didn't know where to look, on how the traffic is going to be handled, getting out of this development. Washington is a suicide trip, so you can't really do that. So your only options are really to go right past the city hall and try to get on 580 there, which trying to do that today was a little difficult at rush hour, or shooting all the way down St. Pete Drive to Lafayette and going out that way. So that's just a concern of mine, is the traffic. I don't have so much of a problem with the apartments, with the parking garage. But my other concern is the parking for the retail development of this site. They say there's going to be street parking. That's going to be taken up by some of the tenants that already have buildings, businesses on that street. And to make that a viable area for the retail trade, restaurants or whatever, I think we've got to address additional parking areas somehow. We've got the parking garage down the street, I understand that. And I've looked at all the plans for the St. Pete redevelopment, the walking and all that. I just don't know if that's going to work for, the residents to come downtown and make it a viable area. Maybe we have to worry a little bit less about the density, maybe reduce that so we can get more parking, or, I'm looking for answers for it. It just seems like we're just trying to stick too much into one little ball here to get it done. So that's all I really had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Anyone else would like to speak to the council? Come on up, please.
Jerry Bevelman, 512 Pine Avenue South. The problem with this is that what you've created, you are creating it around residential areas. And you should always protect those residential areas, such as on State Street all the way through Lafayette Boulevard. Yes, there can be a hotel on Lafayette Boulevard now because of what's been presented in the past. A developer can ask for that kind of a building on Lafayette. You should protect the residents of this city. I would never vote for. I've had examples where I talked to a developer to trade his land on Lafayette Boulevard. I mean, on Forest Lakes Boulevard, because he was going to build a strip center there on Pine Avenue and Lafayette, Forest Lakes Boulevard. So I went to the owner of that land and I said, look, when I was mayor, I said, you want a zoning change on Pine Avenue and next to Tampa Road. I said, here's what you do. I said, you give the city that particular land you own on the corner of Forest Lakes Boulevard and Pine Avenue. And it was huge. It was a huge piece of land. And I made a statement there when I was mayor, there would never be a 7-Eleven or any strip center on Forest Lakes Boulevard. It's in the middle of a residential area. Well, he traded it. I also got him to trade the land on where you used to live, at that lake out there. And he gave that to the city, that big lake. So there wouldn't be a hotel built there behind the fire station. Before you make any decisions, put yourself in the position of being a resident of Osmar next to that type of development. You should never do it. And I would ask you to consider that. If you want to put hotels and increase density on Racetrack Road, that's fine. You got 105 acres there. And there will be hotels there, I'll guarantee you, across from the racetrack. Don't put 5-story in density on residential areas. Or Tampa Road, he's right. The traffic on Tampa Road now, you aren't going to get out of this development. Only on Washington, and come out here in 580, or go all the way down to State Street, or St. Petersburg Drive. Consider that. Take care of your residents. Don't put them in jeopardy of more traffic, hotels, or whatever. It's in y'all's hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Are there any other persons that wish to be heard? Then I will close the open forum. Our first item on the agenda is a work session to discuss the elements of the conceptual site plan submitted by Stanberry Development Group in response to the request of proposal on August 27th, 2024. The City Council authorized the city manager to negotiate with Stanberry Development Group. City Manager Felicia Downey will introduce this item.
Hi, good evening, council. At your request to have a work session to discuss the specific elements, as the mayor just said, John Meyer and Mark Hayes from Stanberry Development are here. So,
Welcome, Mark.
Hi, thank you. How is everybody?
Welcome, John.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So thanks for having us. We appreciate this. We appreciate the opportunity of being here with you guys tonight to hopefully exchange some information, some thoughts, and have a productive work session, right? So I'm Mark, obviously, John Meyer, my partner. As you guys have seen our faces here over the last year and a half, 2 years, quite a bit, and we look forward to to working with the city and working this through. Just to kind of kick things off, when we first worked on this, year and a half ago or whatever it was, we kind of poured over the whole project, and one of the things that we had a little bit of difficulty with was how to make the numbers work, right? We sent a letter, and even our work product and stuff to the city, kind of stating such, just saying, look, we took it quite seriously. We want you guys to know that, but we just can't quite frankly figure out how to make it all work given the parameters. Those were revised. We came back, and here we are now. When we put together the plan, oh, there it is. We really tried, and I think succeeded. I think we're at maybe 8 units over what just regular code is, but we really tried to be thoughtful, and really our partners and our group, along with the help of our architects, really poured over the plan to try to make sure we met code, and met all the parameters of the RFP. I think we might be 8 units over or something like that. And clearly 8 units in a project like this would not be, anything we couldn't overcome. We didn't ask for the Supermax bonus or any of that because we were trying to be thoughtful and trying to kind of meet what we thought the city was looking for. We're here to work with you guys. We understand that this is going to require a bit of work and compromise and that. But I think from our standpoint, we'd really like to hear the city and the council's thoughts relative to what does this project kind of look like now? What are those components? We're happy to go back and look at redesigning, at compromise, at reconfiguring space. But just are really looking for a bit more clarity before we go back, spend more time, energy, money, come back, and find out that even though we thought we were following the parameters, maybe we weren't quite there. So that's kind of I guess where I would start this off. Clearly, we do understand that State Street is a sensitive topic. So, if we're talking about height on State Street, that certainly is something that we can work through. I know when we had the presentations at the library back in July, I believe it was, we had a lot of constituents come up to us, give us a lot of feedback on our pictures and our schematic. The one thing that I if I said it once, I said it 130 times that night, is I said, look, please understand, this is all this is a schematic. It's an idea, right? We're presenting an idea on how we think we can configure a mixed-use project that incorporates retail, restaurant, multifamily, and public space, public gathering area, the plaza, Point Park, and some of this other stuff. I said the one thing that I can guarantee you will happen with this project, it will change. What you're looking at tonight as we stand here on July 17th or whatever it was, will not be what we're talking about a year from now or a year and a half from now if we're lucky enough to be chosen. It's how these projects go. So we certainly understand that. I want you guys to know that, and I guess that would be kind of my opening comments, and would love to hear more from you guys or answer questions or.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. Does anybody want to start, or you want me to start? I'd like to start if you wouldn't mind. Is that okay, team? I talked to John on the phone after the council meeting, and I made it clear to him that I wanted to discuss, Mark, what I heard from the residents. And what they were saying is they wanted to keep consistency on State Street. They wanted 3-story buildings like the town center at the corner of St. Pete Drive and State Street. But on the corner, it's 4 stories. So I was explaining to John on the phone that I would like to see that in the plan, if possible, 4 stories on the corners of the street. So on your site plan, you see item 3 and item 4. On the corners, it would be 4 stories, but then along the street of State Street, it would be 3 stories. And that's what I tried to explain to John on the phone, that the people, the residents, were giving me feedback as far as the conceptual plan that you guys have come up with. As far as I believe the plan, I didn't hear anything negative about that. The only negative thing I heard was the 5 stories, and I was explaining that to John
Yeah.
on the phone. So I wanted to share that with you, and if anybody else would like to share anything, please jump in. Vice Mayor, you want to say anything?
Well, it's always my understanding, if we're going off of the theme of smart growth, and smart growth is, I'm sure, you know, it's an actual concept, right? And there's 10 principles of smart growth. And so I hear the term smart growth all the time. So I did some research on smart growth. And there's 10 principles of smart growth. So the first is mixed land uses. The second is take advantage of compact design. Third is create a range of housing opportunities and choices. 4, create walkable neighborhoods. 5, foster distinctive, attractive communities with a strong sense of place. 6, preserve open space, farmland, which is not the case here, natural beauty, and critical environmental areas. 7, direct development towards existing communities. 8, provide a variety of transportation choices. 9, make development decisions predictable, fair, and cost-effective. And 10, which was what we're doing tonight, hopefully, is encouraging community and stakeholder collaboration in development decisions. So with what the mayor's comments just were about the 4 stories going down to 3, and as one of our residents came up and correctly noted, the code can go up to 6 stories. What I'm focused on right now, just after what the mayor said, I may have further comments as we proceed tonight, but 2, take advantage of compact design. So the definition of that, and this is all coming from, I don't even want to write this down, Smart Growth USA, and it's smartgrowthamerica.org is the website. There's also a 39-page treatise that was written by the EPA that is linked on their webpage that explains it in further detail, gives several examples of smart growth, of mixed-use development, whether that was refurbishing existing buildings, which I'm sure you've dealt with before, or using vacant land against abutting already established communities, which is what we're dealing with in our situation. So I want to focus on number 2, and just to repeat myself, it's take advantage of compact design. So Mayor, to your point, the 5 stories, I've heard a couple of things about it, that, oh, we want it smaller. I have a problem with that, and I'll explain it here in a second. So compact design means making more efficient use of land that has already been developed. Encouraging development to grow up rather than out is one way to do this. Infill development, building on empty or underutilized lots, is another. Building within an existing neighborhood can attract more people to the jobs, homes, and businesses already there, while also making the most of public investments in things like water and sewer lines, roads, and emergency services. It comes straight from Smart Growth America. So my concern with pushing the building down a story is, in order to do that and still maintain a consistent unit count, and I know we were a tick above with the 31.25, but of course that was always going to be a topic of discussion. You push that down, that pushes the building out. Picture a marshmallow. Marshmallow sitting on your hand, what happens when you push it down? Pushes out. There's less space in your hand because you push the marshmallow down. So if we want to maximize the amount of acreage and as much as possible for space for our residents, which was what we've been discussing for years now, I don't see how pushing the building down, creating a bigger building with less space for the residents would be how I would want to move forward. That's my comments just on what my reaction to what you had just said. Again, I will likely have more, I may not, but just that's where I wanted to begin tonight at least. Thank you.
To clarify, were you suggesting what he just said, a marshmallow effect, where you would push the units down to 3 stories and then spread the building bigger to maintain the same number of units? Or are you suggesting move it down to 3 stories, fit as many units as you can in that building at 3 stories, and see if that's a workable project.
As I explained to John on the phone, yes, I was talking about going lower, but not really sure, as I explained on the phone, not really sure if we could expand wider, the marshmallow effect that Vice Mayor said.
Right, and my point is, if you're for maximizing space, because there's such a paucity of space in the county, you actually want to build up, because that maximizes the space for the people to use on the ground, if I'm not mistaken. I'm no developer, as we all know, but if I'm not mistaken, just simple logic would dictate, that's why they say build up, because it maximizes the space on the ground for more amenities, for more things for people to do, maybe a bigger dog park, things like that, with more space to walk around, to maneuver. So that's why I was fine with it on the front end. That's why I'm fine with it again tonight, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Anything else you want to comment on, Valerie, while you have the floor?
I mean, I guess, yeah, I know that you guys have heard from me just like a tiny bit. I didn't get to be part of the process where you presented and we were up here, the whole presentation. I was in the audience, and I stayed for the entire day, so I got to see you guys. I'm kind of along with what the mayor is saying. I'm hearing a lot of feedback and in fact ran a lot of my campaign on this project. And there are several concerns with it, mainly the 5 stories that you were discussing, Vice Mayor, but also the amount of units. It's not just the height of the building, it's the amount of people you would be putting into that building. And the concerns we're hearing is about capacity at our elementary schools, traffic, as we heard earlier. So it's not just the height of the building. It's like a layered, the part of the whole project. We're here to talk about compromise. I don't know if there's anything you guys can do, if it's a feasible project on your end, if you lower the amount of units. And so I'd love to hear some feedback on that. I know that that's part of the negotiation, so I don't know if that's something you want to do in an open forum here today. But I guess in that same vein, if we're talking about, building up smart growth, could we, I don't know, take that parking garage and build it a little higher and put more public space there? It's a hard situation, because the people who live right here next to this, where you're going to build, are very upset about the height and the number of people that you're talking about putting here on a 2-lane road. So the infrastructure is tough there, right off of Tampa Road. As the gentleman who spoke before, the traffic getting in and out of the area, they're concerned about, because of that traffic being difficult getting out onto Tampa Road, that people are going to turn around and go through our neighborhoods. And we've already kind of have an issue with people running stop signs near our elementary schools that we're discussing on traffic safety. So, these are just some of the concerns that we're looking at real time.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would say to that comment specifically, because that kind of, that comment can kind of, the traffic issue can become, can kind of go to other issues as well, right? And that's part of what we're all going to work on, right? I mean, presumably, there's going to be traffic studies done. There's going to be any development we do. There's a number of things that you work through, right? With the city, with planning board, with whoever, right? Sometimes the county, what have you, and certainly having traffic studies done, and having the city engineer or whoever make recommendations. We have a project in New Jersey. You guys have heard about it, I believe, and we ended up with this ultimately terrific improvement for not only our project, but for the area regionally. And it came out of the recommendation of the city engineer as we were working through things. It was blessed by New Jersey DOT, which is not a group that gives blessings easily, right? But it was all through back and forth and working together. And the engineer all of a sudden is like, well, wait a minute, what if we were to do something like this? And so that's part of a process, right? The one thing that I guess I would ask, or that we want to understand is, over the last couple of months, one of the things that we've heard a lot about is density, right? But at times, the density, by the way, under the code is 30 units per acre, right? So if this is 8 acres, 240 units, right? If it's a little shy, it's a little shy, right? There are times, though, that we hear the term density used, and I think, I don't want to speak for everybody on our team, but I think it sounds like it's almost being used in place of height, right? And that's one of the things I think we have to understand, because if it's a height issue on State Street specifically, then there might be ways that we can creatively work around that. Maybe you step up the building and do some other things, and you can, you don't have, you try to mitigate the marshmallow effect, keep some space for the community, all that type of stuff. But I think it's important for us, and well, if it comes out of this meeting, great. But if not, if it's something that we understand as we go along, probably sooner better than later. But is 30 units an acre objectionable, or is it really, hey, we don't want a 5-story building on State Street? Because that, when we go back and we huddle up and we look through design and do some sketches, and then our architects laugh at the sketches we do, and then they say, okay, how about this? And we say, oh, that's a lot better. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to work through to make sure that we're being thoughtful.
Perfect. Andrew?
Thank you. Excuse me. As it relates to this discussion on height, could you, Mark, you just kind of touched on it, but as far as along the State Street frontage, more specifically, but just both frontages, if you want to loop in Washington as well, what are the types of things that can help mitigate the imposing feeling of any height of a building? Some combination of setbacks as well as step backs is the traditional means of that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's difficult. I won't bother flipping through the slides unless you guys want me to, and I'm happy to go find it. But one of the things that happens in those renderings, we were just talking about, is we see it and we're like, oh yeah, we like, it's kind of it's what we do, right? So we inherently look at something and we notice a very slight very slight change, and then we say, oh yeah, there's a step back on the second floor. But if you aren't attuned to that, you might not notice it, right? As you look at our renderings, you might look and you might just say, oh my gosh, wow, look how big that looks, right? And you might not notice that, oh, at the second story, I think we tried to speak to it when we made our presentation, but at the second story, it actually steps back. And it's quite inviting, actually, because then the people that have those apartments at that level actually have a patio. And so when you're on the street, there'll be trees and whatever, but if you were to look up all of a sudden, when the weather's nice, when things are active, you'll notice some people sitting up there just looking, and the whole thing just comes across as a little bit more inviting, and maybe isn't fully represented, as best as it could be in a single rendering.
Sure.
But we would certainly there's things that you can do there architecturally and design-wise that can help ease the significance of that building.
Then, as far as, and this isn't really a question, it's probably just more kind of commentary amongst council, is, if you look at, and I'm not trying to discount the personal opinions of anybody or what their perception is, the potential impacts of this project, right? Conservatively, or if I want to overestimate, there are probably 10 housing units immediately adjacent to this property, right? Direct line of sight. Now, ones that are up the road on Park Boulevard and Washington and Fairfield, in total, then you may have, let's, again, overestimate 30, 40 houses that may have some line of sight to this parcel or to anything constructed on it. And I've definitely heard the feedback as far as those that, more so from the sense of the potential number of people based on the unit count of not only this project, but other ones that we've previously been presented and considered. But I was kind of hoping if either the mayor or Councilmember Tedeszewski could help me understand a little bit better what the issue about building height specifically is. Is it that people don't want to be able to see it? They're concerned about somebody being able to see their house? That it's, again, like I said, kind of blocking some portion of the upper skyline. That's what I'm kind of struggling with is, yes, there are tall people drive past buildings of whatever height all the time. Living near one, obviously none of these people currently live near or super close to a 5-story building. Some further down to the east live close to a 4-story building. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around understanding what that impact is, because a building in and of itself, 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories, doesn't physically do anything. Obviously, its presence is there. So I'm trying to understand, like, how do people perceive that presence of any size building and what that negative impact is to their quality of life. So if you don't have anything, that's fine. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. It's just I'm trying to understand that better to see like how much weight do we really need to have on that as far as what this could impact, because to Vice Mayor Graver's point is the economics of it is these guys probably need to stay somewhere around 250. There's probably some wiggle room, I would presume, as they've alluded to, but something's got to give, right? Either you're going to be taking away green space if we're lowering it and the unit count's still hovering at around where it is. You may have to then adjust and go from a single deck garage to two levels on the deck of a garage to compensate for that. So again, I'm just trying to understand that better, and that's kind of where I'm at on this topic of height that we're on at the moment. So if you have anything to elaborate further, that would really be helpful.
Yeah. So some of the feedback that I'm hearing, just in regard to the height, is you're right. It's an abstract concept, right? It's about how that makes you feel when you're standing next to it. But I think it's the feedback that I'm getting is that it feels like it blocks out the sky. Like when you're standing next to it, it feels obtrusive. And obviously it's difficult. We haven't worked with this developer before. We haven't seen this type of project. We're not getting the same kind of objections to the project down next to the library, right? Those are couple-story buildings. So it's difficult to explain, but it's emotional for people. Sure. These are people who have lived here for many, many years. Your family lived and grew up here. And so, it'd be like if somebody picked your neighborhood to build a 5-story building. You know what I mean? Like, it's change, and that's difficult. People don't like it in general. But then I think it gets... I think it's particularly difficult with this process, and this is a little unfair to you because you were not involved in this, but I think it's particularly difficult because of the history of this project and because of things that we know that went on in the past. And I know that you guys are trying to compromise. You're trying to, I believe that you're coming from a good place. I know that you're trying to bring a project that the public will like. I think that's where we all are.
Sure.
It's just a simple disagreement of what that project would look like. And so I don't know that there will be a time where I'll look at this project and I'll say, yes, this is what I would have picked out if I had a blank plan and we gathered the community together and said, what do you want? You know, before the meeting on the vote for this, I went back and I re-listened to the visioning meeting that we had a couple years ago and listened and actually wrote down all of the key words that people were giving in regards to the type of project that they wanted. This was not, I know it's a mixed-use project. There's a lot of financial responsibilities that you have on the project has to make sense financially for you to want to build it, right? We can't just come up with a pie in the sky idea and say, this is what we want, and somebody magically comes in and can deliver that, right? So I don't know. I don't have a solid answer for you. I mean, I'm just trying to be real here. I just know that people don't like it, and that's the feedback that I have.
So thank you for that. I would like to answer.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I want everyone to look at the site plan for me. As I mentioned, I was talking with John Meyer on the phone after our council meeting, and I explained to him from the site plan. Item number 5, I actually said to him that we should extend the apartments to the end all the way to number 9, where that could be 4 stories, but in the middle it would be 3 stories. And on the corner of Washington and State, it would be 4 stories. And then where the number 4 is, it would be 3 stories all the way to almost to the corner. That would be 3, but on the corner it would go back to 4 stories. So you could keep your apartments to the same amount or close. Maybe we'd lose the 8 that we're talking about. But that was some of the points that I mentioned to John, were some of my concept ideas. And if you want to go to slide number 3 in your presentation, because what it is on slide 3, what I've heard is when you look at this one here with the tall and the short, slide 3, this one.
Yep.
Okay, look to the left. Okay, those are the buildings that are there right now. Some of those buildings are owned by Davis Buse on State Street. And then you look across the street, you're looking at 5. So if you go to 4 on the corners, like we have at the town center, and then you go down to 3, you're keeping that whole State Street look vibe. We're continuing that vibe of that look for our downtown. And I hope that explains where I'm coming at, Andrew.
Sure.
Because you do have some really good points. I respect what you have to say, I really do. But this is where I'm coming from the view that I see of our downtown. This is what I see. So we've got only 2 stories on the one side, so we're only going up 3 stories, which is 1 more story, but the corners, you can gather some density, whatever you want to call it, or more apartment space on the corners. And I would not be objective to the site plan of going all the way down Washington to the corner. As I mentioned to John on the phone, I mentioned to him that if you're on the corner of State Street and Washington, you had 4 stories, I don't think I'd have a problem going 4 stories all the way to Tampa Road on Washington, but not 5. And I just hope that helps
No,
with the question.
that helps. Like I said, I'm not trying to make a statement that necessarily I believe 5 stories is the right answer or what's appropriate. Just, again, just having the context of better understanding, because I haven't gotten that same level of type of feedback as it relates to building height. I kind of inferred it as, okay, well, a 5-story building with a certain number of units, well, that just more building height equates to more people, which I know that's an issue as well, or a concern, from a traffic and safety perspective. But yeah, it's just kind of understanding the context of that, because I know it's important, and that's why what's important to me is not this straight up, very cubic type looking building, which I think, like this image here, represents that to a certain degree, and there's room for adjustment on that front as well, as we know. So yeah, again, just trying to understand that better. And I know that the whole point of this is for them to get the feedback from us, and for all of us to have a better understanding of what's most important to try to get to something that more people will be excited about and not feel like it's just a radical change and so dramatic that, you know, then it doesn't come to be or comes to be hated and empty.
Well, and I think Council Member Knapp, to your point, I mean, that's one of the things. So, you know, as we put this package together and work on, giving a presentation that we hope impresses you guys, impresses the community, shows what we're able to do, capable of doing, but most importantly, the vision for the project. Again, going back to the fair over at the library back in July, you know, for sure, the very clean lines that are shown on this, it emphasizes that architecture on the corner and draws your attention to kind of the height and, you know, a little bit the starkness even. Those are all things that you work on over time. And as we work with our architects, you know, this, again, as I shared with so many people, you know, it's more about the public space, the combination of uses, certainly maybe number of units, but not necessarily the design. Please don't get caught up in the design. For us to properly show you the design in a real meaningful way, the amount of money we'd spend in time and energy you couldn't have done for just the presentation we were making, right? It was really about the vision. And so this would be softened for sure. We would work with you guys on that. I think the members of the community, you know, if they look at this, we get it, right? But I think there's ways of perhaps dealing with height, but I think there's also ways through architectural imagery for textures, for materials and everything else that could make this feel a whole lot more soft, maybe is the right word, than it does now. And I think that's one of the things I would point out, and I think astutely, Councilmember Knapp point out, is that, this will change, right? And we will get feedback, and we will take that, and we will try to be thoughtful with it, and we'll deliver a product, I'm sure of it, that will not only meet your guys' needs, but that of the residents of Oldsmar.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Gannon. Do you want to please comment?
Thank you. So there's a couple of things happening right now that are really actually encouraging to me. I love the ideas that you mentioned. I love that we're answering each other's questions a little bit. I love the information that you brought about smart growth. And while I like a lot of things in these pictures, I do think what you're saying is important about, okay, that's a picture, but what's important to me? So some of the things that I pulled out all my questions, from last time, from August, and the planning and redevelopment director's sort of curbside review of some of the things that definitely don't, comply with the code and stuff like that. And I when I was looking at that, a couple of things really stood out to me that I wanted to communicate tonight. First, that a downtown was promised, right? We all know that a downtown was promised. So I think in contrast, for example, to the library project, you have a certain number of units per acre, but we all know that while there's some public space there and perhaps some live-work units, that's not really our downtown. It's a stop along the corridor that takes us past our parks, that takes us to our library, that hopefully we can connect to this, which I believe we all consider to be our downtown. And in looking at the way that you envision this, regardless of what's on these pictures, if it's brick, if it's, what have you, a number that was really important to me was 20%. And 20% is the percentage that y'all dedicated to non-residents for this project. It's 20% for the community. And I really like that because, again, a downtown was promised, right? So there's that delicate balance between, we need to build something that allows us to afford to include an element that is for our residents that are here. And another thing that's happening that's important to me is hearing your level of flexibility with some ideas. And I remember before we did the ranking and all that stuff that we were trying to remind ourselves, perhaps we got lost, that we were looking for a partner, right? We're looking for a partner to take us through this process, a partner that can, you know, move with some of the criticism and help us, you know, work with our staff, work with our residents, work with all of our thoughts, and bring something eventually, you know, as we move down the, you know, checklist of, you know, concurrency tests, you know, water and sewer, what are the impacts there? You know, the traffic modality study. And I know you have experience in New Jersey, but wait till you meet the FDOT people, because Tampa Road is FDOT. I'm just letting you know that that's Florida Department of Transportation. That is a state road. We cannot help you there. And, you know, there'll be those stops along the way. So I am looking for, honestly, I thought it was really great that y'all were willing to come back and have a work session with us. I thought that that was an important sign of collaboration, an important sign of sort of a resilient relationship, right? You hear some criticism, okay, well, what can we do with it instead of forget it, you know? That's important to me because I think our residents want to feel a level of comfort with each step in the process. I do see what I do see what Vice Mayor Knapp is saying about the marshmallow effect, right?
I'm Vice Mayor Kraber.
Um,
I'm a fan of Councilmember Knapp, former Vice Mayor Knapp, but I'm just saying.
Let me just back up. Excuse me.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that
Nope,
does.
nope, I'm trying, you know, if I weren't sitting up here, I would just say Steve,
Let's call me
right?
Steve, I don't care.
Okay, so Steve, I'm cognizant of what Steve said about the marshmallow effect, right? And if it's the height we're trying to resolve, just, you know, take off the top floor, then where do we put those units? Okay, so we avoid the marshmallow effect, then where do we put those additional units so the pro forma works? Because that was, you know, part of the deal. And of course, we have the experience of learning that the pro forma doesn't work when we do it other ways, right? Because we got 0 proposals when we tried to do it that way. So, okay, let's slice off the top or maybe move it down the road like the mayor suggested. You know, if we slice off the top, then where could we put it? I am glad that we're hearing some flexibility in ideas. I don't know how much flexibility there is, you know, if it's possible to move it down the road. I don't know. That's an interesting idea. If it's possible to switch out the, you know, the garage, you know, over in Midtown, they've got units on top of garages. You know, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I will say, though, it is important to me that, I mean, it doesn't have to stay at 20%. I'm, of course, willing to compromise. But I do think it's really important that our residents have something to go to, because a downtown was promised. I don't think that our residents would want to see the same number of units per acre, but spread shorter throughout the site, so it's less imposing, but then there's really not necessarily, I mean, if you guys have a way to make it, you know, enticing for residents to come to that kind of development, I'd love to see it. Maybe if we, you know, squish it down and avoid the marshmallow effect by adding retail at the bottom of all of them, or I don't know. Do you see? I don't know the answers to those questions, but do you see the important thing to me is that a downtown was promised, and I do want to have a decent percentage of that dedicated to the community. One of the reasons I do like this version of it, and I'm not saying that a squashed down version, a shorter version, spread out wouldn't work. I do like some of the way that this is designed, though, because of the plaza. So the space mark number 1 and 2, I know that we want retail, but that plaza and the potential uses for it sounded really cool to me. And I think that would be a special and frequently used area. I know that, we have the buildings laid out in a certain way, and I know there have been challenges, to say the least, with this pie piece shaped land, but I don't know if there's a different way to orient them or a way to make them deeper. But that's not really here for us to figure out. That's more like on your guys' side to help us see something different. It is hard, though, because pictures are tough, right? You see a picture and then you can't forget it. And I think what has happened to a certain extent is people have seen different pictures, not necessarily your pictures. And some of those older pictures they saw were the imposing kind of structure. They were the more cubic structure that Andrew, sorry, we're just going first names now, guys, sorry, that Andrew talked about. So when people hear about a new project downtown, I think people are on guard. I do. So there's that. That being said, there are pictures in your submission of projects that you guys have worked on that are very appealing to me. I can hold them up, but this one is not necessarily one of them because that's a giant building. But this plaza style, down here, that's kind of what I saw going on near number 1. So, to a certain extent, I do believe that even if you take it down to 3 stories, somebody's not going to like it. If you take it down to 2 stories, somebody's not going to like it. I think there'll be, it'll be, at some point we will see the diminishing returns of making accommodations. As far as the other concerns, I know that you guys probably saw the drive-by review by our planning and redevelopment staff. And I know, again, these are just pictures, but it would be important to me to see, on an eventual design, the compliance with the rest of the pieces of the code. And parking was one of those things. And actually, there's a reduced number of parking spaces for multifamily development. So, we can see in the future how that pans out. Ingress and egress, it is a thing. Washington and State Street, kind of coming out there, but I recognize that a traffic modality and a traffic study, a modality study, is the only way we're going to find out those answers. What gives me encouragement is that I'm hearing that, as we maybe move toward that, it sounds like you've had experience with trying to deal with a traffic problem in New Jersey, and there was a solution eventually reached. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for solutions. I'm looking for collaboration. I'm looking for, some of that more substantive feedback and ideas. I'm interested in y'all's expertise. But I am very mindful of the marshmallow effect, as Steve mentioned, that a downtown was promised, and a quality downtown. Right. Not necessarily something that's just a strip of, a bottom floor dedicated to the public, because you can only do so much with that. And we have that kind of going on at the Galleria, which I'm sure you guys have seen down the street. I would love to see that variation. You said something important to me in the prior meeting. You said it was like a broken smile sort of along State Street, or like the teeth. Some of the businesses on the opposite side of State Street are kind of working, some of them are kind of not. And I would love to see a development help turn the entire street over. That would be really beautiful. And I would like to see us get there with a partner that has the level of experience and team that you've submitted. So that's kind of my thinking. I really appreciate that everybody came tonight with ideas and some thoughts about ways to mitigate the concerns and the willingness to continue to keep talking. So
So I just have one point that I did mention on the phone with John when I talked to him. Part one, the plaza, I said we shouldn't change it. I think that's amazing. That's a gateway from Park. You're talking Ariel's Park, that's a gateway from that park, right down Park to that plaza. And I mentioned that I think that concept is perfect. I love the open area. I love how you designed that. I don't think anything there has to be changed. The only thing I was concerned about is what the residents had said to me, 3 stories, 4 stories in the corner, but I just wanted to make that clear to the council and to you, Mark and John.
Yeah. So I'll make a couple, made a couple notes and have a couple thoughts on some of what Katie said specifically, but then even what your comments just now, Mayor, and a little bit relative to Vice Mayor Graber's comments about the marshmallow effect. Right?
I need
So-
T-shirts or something. It
Right,
sounds like I need-
right. We're gonna have a made marshmallow
That's the only
effect,
thing I
right.
thought of. It's just-
But, there is a little bit of a, science to all of it. You're putting this kind of 3D puzzle together, and you do
I
have
get
to, and you have to be very thoughtful about the retail, right? I had a number of people approach me at the library and tell me that, the retail was not their exact words, but that retail was really a joke and all we wanted to do was build apartments and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's actually the exact opposite of what we do as a company, right? So we were all born from retail. We were all born from the mall business or lifestyle centers or what have you, and it's kind of what we take pride in. So I kind of rebuted that, but what have you. But there is a science. You can't build too much, because then you do have vacancies, and that doesn't feel great. Right? If you don't build enough, then you're like, okay, we have a restaurant and 2 shops, and that doesn't exactly feel like a downtown, right? And so there is a balance that needs to be met there, and the retail has to be positioned in ways that it can actually work. And sometimes that's underneath the apartments, sometimes it isn't. But the other problem that you have is underneath the apartments is wonderful. It costs more, but it also takes your apartments up, right? So then all of a sudden we're only exacerbating the height issue, right? So those are some of the things that we're going to have to kind of talk about and work through. This project for us, and really not even just for us, for any developer, right? So it doesn't matter if it's us up here or if it would be somebody else up here a year from now. One of the issues that's kind of, and I'm sure Mayor and Councilman Gannon, I think you talked to John about this, but just for everybody else's edification, if it hasn't been discussed, is typically, as a developer, you either own or you control a piece of property. You understand what the zoning code is, you understand what its potential is, and then you work on a project. And then you inevitably come to the city and you say, boy, how lovely is our design? And they say, well, it's kind of lovely. And you go back and forth and you have working sessions and you do other things and you arrive at a project. For us as a developer, this project, quite frankly, is a little scary. And that is, you don't have that level of control, right? And so we could spend a lot of time, energy, and money. We could spend months, we could spend a year working on this, delivering all sorts of great stuff. And if we get to a place where all of a sudden the council doesn't vote for it, that doesn't really work for a developer, right? And so I think the back and forth with council in the city is something that's really critical to us, right? I mean, it's really like we need to be working in tandem and together. And we really have grown to really love this little community that you guys have. And it really, like that little piece of property really could be really rather interesting. But we can't move forward naively, right? And so I think that was, I don't say that for any reason other than just to make sure that if you weren't aware of that aspect or hadn't thought of that, that was, that you knew of that, right? So from that standpoint, it's atypical, but here we are and we're working together and we're having a work session. And I'd love to understand from you guys, you know, we can go back, we'll start kind of playing with things, try to see how we can, you know, create the balance between the retail, the multifamily, some of the height issues, but maintain the public space. It's all a little bit of a juggling act. We're going to avoid the marshmallow effect the best we can. But again, more than anything, we want you guys to know that we are partners, and you know where to find us, how to reach us. I'm sure we'll be having plenty of conversations with Felicia, and we certainly look forward to that. But if there's any other feedback that you have, whether it be now or next week or, you know, at some point in time, please, you know where to reach us. And
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just, I had some thoughts in my head. And so I just, you know, the discussion of, well, there's going to be 250 units. That means there's going to be 500 cars. Well, I have a family of 4. We have 1 car because I work from home. And a whole lot of people work from home. We just saw one of our largest businesses, our largest business, the building, everybody went home for COVID and they stayed there, right? I've been
I'm
home.
a single mom, I only have 1 car.
You only have 1 car. So, I mean, but it'll be 5 years in March that I've been home, right? And so my wife keeps telling me we need another car. I keep saying, no, we don't, because we don't, right? And so just so that's understood. I understand the narrative of school and capacity, and it's okay. Pinellas County School Board deals with capacity issues every single year, if not every single month, if not every single week, because it's the most highly populated county in the state, I believe, right?
2 years ago, though, we did do kind of like a soft inquiry for Forest Lakes Elementary
Right.
and for Oldsmar Elementary, and they had plenty of capacity.
And which I've
That
heard
was
as
2
well.
years ago,
Right.
though,
And I don't
but-
have those numbers, so I didn't want to quote them, but I've heard the
Yeah.
same exact thing, and you guys know that I'm involved with the school, so I understand that. But that issue will be handled by the school board, and they will understand how many people are here, right? So I just want to make sure that's clear. So in terms of traffic, would there be increased traffic? Potentially. But the other thing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a huge history buff, but the single-family homes and the 2 cars and the 3 kids, that was all after World War II when everybody came home. That's why everything was built kind of out.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much traffic. I mean, it's traffic because everybody's got cars, don't get me wrong, but everybody had to drive.
Yeah.
And so we liked a neighborhood that was, my parents' house when I was going to high school was 30 miles away from my high school. That's where they liked to live. That's where they wanted to live. So I drove 30 miles uphill both ways, but every single day. And that's just what happened. So there's more cars, right? But the dynamic of living has changed. And so that's why you need a mixed use, because the way that I see this, and I'm sure there will be families that live in these homes who will need schooling, don't get me wrong. But maybe mom or dad, or the folks who came by the meeting last night, the gentleman who was already retired. This guy was 40, he's retired. No, I swear to God.
That's what and his wife, too.
Right, but just what you envision here almost is their apartments, maybe we don't have enough money for down payment. How much have we heard that during all of the housing that we've gone through since COVID? Since 2008, to be quite honest. I mean, I'm in the business, I know, Katie, you're kind of ancillary to the business. Val, you're involved as a paralegal at your firm. And so, but what happens when you're dating, you're engaged, or you just got married? What do you want to do when you get home? You want to go to your apartment because you can't afford a down payment, you can't buy a house. So you go downstairs. Do you want to drive, take an Uber, or do you want to go downstairs and go to your favorite place and then go back upstairs? Both have full-time jobs, everybody's working, everybody's loving it. I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, but that has always been my vision for this sort of place. And another thing, and I know it's a difficult concept to kind of understand, but when there is more foot traffic, that actually causes people to slow down when they're driving. Because nobody wants to hit anyone, right? But it causes them to slow down and be on more alert. So the height issues, I think we're gonna be hovering around the 250. Maybe it goes down to 240, but it's gonna be hovering around there. So I don't think that's gonna change. I just don't. It may, but as it stands right now, I don't think it will.
Well,
We're
I
gonna
think
have
it's gotta stay there for you guys.
It's gonna have to hover right around there. No, exactly. I'm not speaking for you at all, but it's gonna stay there. I don't want to say it again, but the marshmallow, I don't want it pushed down and taken away from what everyone has expressed to us. Because there are people who like this project as it stands. It's not just the, hey, everybody hates it, so we gotta change it. There's people I talk to that like it. Not necessarily come to meetings and discuss it, but there's people who are like, just like, hey, when are we getting that thing built? And I was like, oh, did you see this one? Like, oh, man, that's great. But they want something, they want somewhere to go. And to the mayor's point too, when we have our festivals down at Ari Olds Park, and you can create that foot traffic, and then there's something else to, like, it's not only here, hey, we were down at the festival, but there's so much going on. It's like your neighborhood for Halloween. There's 500 kids walking around, 1,000 kids.
Right.
And it's that same kind of feel where it sort of pulls you up into this extra gathering place. And that's, I don't know how that's built. I'm a title insurance lawyer, so I deal with the dirt mostly, construction draws and stuff, so I don't know. Architects would laugh at me too. I'd be like, I still draw like the square house with the windows and the cross in the middle. It's like, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. But I just want to make sure that those certain points were clear. I know they've come up in the past. I'm sure they'll come up in the future. I'll have the same thoughts on them then, but I just wanted to make sure those were addressed. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're in,
Oh,
yes, oh, yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
As you were commenting, Katie, I think you're absolutely right about the promise downtown. I didn't hit on that, but that's a key piece of this project for our community, is that because the city owns this land, people feel like they own it because it was bought with taxpayer money. So people are invested in what's happening, and that's why it's so emotional for people. So that 20%, I do think it's also very important to me as a council member to keep a significant part of this land available to the public. And I don't know, like, if for some reason we can't reduce the stories, or, if the project can't shift that much just because of logistics, is there something where we could increase something on a roof for people, like something cool on a roof where they could see the water from there, that's like, that'll increase your percentage of the project that is available to the people here, so, unfortunately it's 5 stories, but really cool. You can go up to the top, there's chairs, it's open to the public and also your residents, I know that changes your project dynamically. And I don't know if that's feasible or not, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Okay,
There's something I wanted to kind of reemphasize that Councilmember Gannon said, Katie said. This project, and we say we're gonna build downtown. This project in and of itself is not downtown by itself, right? It's a component.
Right.
It's always been envisioned, going back to the days of Mayor Jerry Beaverland and others, that this was meant to serve as the seed for other prosperity for the city, right? There are other, I'm sure, not necessarily these developers, but others that probably foresee prime candidates of other existing buildings to either be reactivated and or redeveloped.
Right there
But
where the tree is.
There, well, yep, that one. The one just south of number 10 is kind of an old single-story office building.
Yep.
But anyways,
All-
it's important to get something right. I don't think by any means we're gonna get anything perfect. As was said, if law of diminishing returns, we can't make everybody happy. There's gonna be something that almost anyone will find something to have an issue with, right? But what's important is, and for us to not lose sight on, is many of us, if not all, that are now serving and before, is we've said we want to get something done, right? And I'm not saying that we're gonna go out of our way to, just for the sake of getting something done. It is important to have that space that can be activated, because without that, there's just nothing special or unique. It's just storefronts, right? I would anticipate, going back to what I just said about other growth or development opportunity in the future, is that's likely what we would see on the opposite side of the street in the future. I mean, those buildings have served their purposes over the years. It's entirely possible to change. We're seeing other infill development happening up and down Park Boulevard right now. You know, there's houses on double lots that have been purchased after people have lived there for some time and either moved or passed on, and those are getting now, you know, two houses built on those double lot properties. So this is just only the beginning of what's undoubtedly forever going to be change that this city will see. So I think that's important, and I think we all recognize that too. It's something to get started, and I'm sure there's been a lot of apprehension of trying anybody else that might have some opportunity for development, knowing that this is like the big nut of, if this doesn't happen, well, why bother? Why not go elsewhere? Why not go look at what Largo's doing, or what any other municipality's doing with trying to get something started, and frankly, at this point, are probably ahead of us. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys can come up with based on the feedback you've gotten thus far, and I do appreciate, it sounds like, willingness to continue to do this. Obviously that we're not gonna be meeting on a weekly basis or anything like that, but some frequency, I think, will be appreciated by us as well as the citizens, to say there's this willingness to collaborate and get to the finish line in some capacity that's going to be the best project that it can be based on who we're working with.
For the whole community.
Right, exactly.
Do you want to say something, John?
One other thing. Oh, sorry.
Wow.
I'm gonna go full engineer on you.
That's Vice Mayor Knapp, Mayor.
There is a technical term for the marshmallow effect.
Oh, is it? What is it?
Poisson's effect.
What?
Poisson, yeah.
No, we're going with
The
marshmallow.
load that you put on something, it's an engineering.
Do I one-up you very often?
Daniel knows. I see, I got a second.
What, good.
We're going with marshmallow.
You're out.
Marshmallow works.
Marshmallow's out.
Well, you said
Marshmallow
undoubtedly,
effect
so I
looks
can't.
way better on a t-shirt.
The B
Dabba
sign.
dabba doo.
Well, since we're saying, we're
Did you want to
one-upping
say
each other.
something?
Well, we appreciate tonight's session and all your comments. Without restating what we've heard, I took a lot of notes, and we'll certainly re-listen to this, and our partners will as well, to try and coalesce and bring something back to you. But I did want to emphasize a couple things. One is, I think you make a good point about this essentially being the seed to the rest of downtown being redeveloped. Because as it picks up momentum, I think you'll see more great things happen. Restating something that Mark said, and I think I told you on the phone, that the normal development process is you sign a contract for a property, you know what it's zoned. So when you're investing the tremendous amount of money that you need to invest in consultants and your team's time and, you know, travel and lawyers and such, your risk really relates to certainly market financial issues. You know, can tenants actually pay? What the construction costs, and lenders that need to lend, and the equity that you need to raise. Does that all make sense? But you're not really risking that much on the land use, right? Unless you've identified that on the front end. If you're, you know, on a farmland and you're looking to rezone the whole thing, okay, you know you might fail on that.
Right.
But you have a sense of whatever the track record is in that community, in front of that institution that you need to get your approvals for, and that could involve the traffic issues on a county or a state level as well. right? You can wrap your arms around things like utility usage and resources that are available. This is a very strange situation because what we feel happened is we came back, we were awarded the project, but the governing body said, boy, the RFP related to the zoning, the long-standing zoning, and even if you meet it, we may not even like the project. We might want to park there and no development. So the way these developments really work is when you're in pre-development, you're doing all this design work, you're probably going to be well into high six figures, probably seven figures. And if that's what we do and we spend all of our time on it and we come back to you in 12 to 24 months, you could still say no, even though it felt good all along the way and all of our work with your staff. So that's just not something we can do. I would suggest to you that wouldn't make much sense for any developer. And so that's where there's just this disconnect about how our industry works. And our industry has to work that way because you can't just go ahead and build, you know, a 40 or 80 or $100 million project. You have checks and balances, right? You have your lender, you have your equity, and then you're fighting against a whole host of other things like recently interest rates that I think we've all discussed in the past. So I just want to put that into the proper light because it's not just drawing lines on a piece of paper and you know worrying about satisfying everybody. So getting to some other comments that we've heard, in particular over the recent 3 months, and emphasizing what Mark said. In the September 17th meeting, there's some discussion as to how you need to work as one and as a team, and there needs to be compromise in order to do that. Well, we would suggest to you that that involves us and that there's going to have to be some back and forth compromise. We're not expecting that we're going to make some enormous return, right? There's sort of market standards on return, but there's only so much that we can do. One other point is, and again, we're going to sit back and re-listen and look at all of our notes and look at all of the input that we've received from you. I'd ask you to sort of do the same because I'm not really sure that we're going to be able to understand what everybody sees as something that you would support. And it seems like it could be significantly different than what the zoning is. So that all said, I do think, I'm not saying that everyone's going to agree, right? We may not get a 5-0 vote, but we do think that there's something here. It's just a question of what the path is to figure out what it is, and then you know how long that all takes. But it seems like eventually we can. I don't know how many work sessions, and it's probably not every week, but it seems like we'll get there. But I think we all sort of need to reflect on some of the realities that we have, and some of that, of course, a lot of that relates to your community members. Let's see if I have any other notes. So again, I'm not sure if this is something that was addressed specifically, but when you have all these trade-offs that you're doing, whether it's less density that I think is in your head, but to be very clear about it, when you have some of these trade-offs, it has other unintended effects, right? Whether it's a lower return or what you can afford to pay for the ground, or you know how beautiful the project can be, or how much public amenity space you might have. You know, all of these things are going to start to change, and we're just going to have to find a new balance, and that's essentially a compromise, right? So anyhow, thank you very much. We have not had a session like this in the past with other communities. And as we were telling one of your community members earlier today, you guys are a great community. Very, very down to earth, straightforward. You know, it's pretty, we don't feel like the shells are going to be moved on us like frankly happens in New Jersey, and that's why the project can get years. So,
Beat up today, yeah.
which that may be the understatement of all statements. But so we really like working with you. We like the way you guys interact, and like the way you address some of the adversity that you guys encounter to try to get to solutions. And we do think this could be a great start to a revived downtown that, you know, will just evolve over time, but hopefully has a great start.
So I want to speak for the council. I think we all really appreciate you guys coming down here today for this workshop to meet with us and to listen to us. I think we're all very grateful. I believe that we have a consensus that we agree we want to work with you, and you working with our city manager, Felicia Donnelly, to come up with some ideas to share with us. And we want to move forward. If anybody else has any comments, but I think we want to move forward. I agree with Councilmember Gannon. It's time. We need to build a downtown. We've been waiting long enough.
I would just finish, thank you very much, Mayor. I would just finish with kind of two quick thoughts, and that is when we, again, in July at the presentation, there was a person that came up, they were standing in front of this board and kind of looking at it, and I walked over and said, you know, hi, I'm Mark, can I answer any questions for you? And the resident said, oh, my house is right there, and I don't remember if you can see the roof on that slide or if it was just off, you know, but clearly they live close, right? And I would have inferred from the conversation, probably not a supporter, just to put that out there, right? But so as we're going through things and I'm, you know, talking through things and trying to explain things, the resident says, well, and you know, with all these apartments and everything else, where am I going to park? And I laughed, right? And I was like, well, right. So I was like, well, if you live right there, like, I'm hoping you're gonna walk, right? I'm hoping, like, this is the thing, like I said, if you give us the opportunity, right, you can have a really beautiful, wonderful, most significant piece to your future downtown right here. And perhaps, instead of worrying about parking, we'll be able to figure out a way that you'll actually wanna walk there and maybe get an ice cream cone. Or meet some friends for a coffee, or just go to a concert that the school kids are having, or whatever have you. I said, but I would really, all I can ask is that you try to keep an open mind, because we've done this before, and I know it can be really, it can seem like a lot, it can seem kind of cumbersome and a little imposing, but it can be done really well. And I think if you give it a shot, you'll see the benefits to what we're proposing, as long as we all work together in trying to accomplish that. And that's, I guess, what we've tried consistently to try to drive that point home, is if we all work together, there's something here that could be pretty special. And it's the most significant 8 acres you guys have relative to creating a downtown. So it's the most significant piece of property. It will have the most impact on whatever State Street looks like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And if it's done well, it'll be a great impact. And if it's kind of done just sort of okay, the impact will be very different.
All right, any last comments?
Nothing for me.
All right. Felicia, anything? Tom? All right, thank you again so much. Greatly appreciate it. We look forward to the next step. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Talent shows this weekend if you guys want to stick around for some culture.